So we're not just ordering a cart from China, putting some oil in it and slapping it into a package, and having a graphic designer throw a brand on it. Like, it starts with that consumer research, and then we build from there.
All right, everyone, welcome back to High Touch. If this is your first time listening, we're glad you found us. We're just getting this thing off the ground. We've got some incredible guests lined up. So share it with a friend if you dig it. We're building this in real time.
Yep. Founders wasn't enough. We needed to be podcast founders as well. So please validate that decision by commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing it.
Yeah, we're pretty fired up about the guests that we have joining us this afternoon.
Today's guest is someone we've admired for a long time. Kristi Ryder is the head of sales at PAX, one of the most recognizable brands in cannabis. She started in the early medical days of Colorado, managing dispensary floors, connecting with patients, long before cannabis went mainstream. And she's been a sales educator, a live resin pioneer with the lab. Now she leads the sales and field strategy for one of the most widely distributed device and pod platforms in the whole industry. Kristi brings together retail fluency, product strategy, and brand stewardship like few others in the industry. So let's get into it. Kristi, maybe take us back here to the start. Your cannabis career began behind the counter in a medical dispensary. What did that experience teach you about the emotional side of the industry and how to create great resonant experiences for the people coming into the door?
Wow. Well, thank you guys, first of all, for having me. I'm so flattered to be a guest on your podcast. Okay, we're taking it back to 2010. Well, I think something, first of all, that's kind of unique about my story, I've read so many founders' stories, so many folks in the industry stories, and they truly joined the industry because of their passion for it. That was not me. I was in hospitality, serving tables, bartending. I thought I was going to be in the restaurant industry for a very long time. A good friend of mine left and ended up going to work for a dispensary. So he came into the bar, asked what he was doing, he said, I'm running dispensaries. And I was like, dispensaries? I had only ever heard about dispensaries, never been in one, couldn't imagine, what retail experience that looked like, but I was curious. I was intrigued. I didn't smoke weed at that time. I had consumed in the past. I was not a daily user by any means. So he said, actually, we're hiring. We need an admin, a receptionist. You should come work for us. So I thought, oh, well, that sounds interesting. Why not? Why not? I'm serving tables. So I interviewed. It was a very professional interview. The owners at the time were in real estate. So I was at this big, 20-foot table, and I'm thinking, what am I interviewing for? Like, to sell weed here? And I remember something that always stands out to me is the last question they asked me was, did I consume myself? And I had to pause. I was like, this is the first time. First of all, the first time I've probably been asked that, other than filling out and, I don't know, getting a drug test. But I was like, oh my gosh, if I say no, I'm not going to get the job. But I had to be honest.
The reverse
trick question. So I hesitantly was like, no, I don't. They were like, that's okay. You could tell they were terribly disappointed. So I was like, dang, I didn't get that job, but I guess that's okay. But they called me. I ended up getting the job. I became a receptionist at the clinic. And back then it was medical only. So there was so much paperwork to be processed upon a patient entering the store. There was a lot of guidance that needed to be done to get them, to the doctor to receive their medical card, the process with the state. And then eventually, we were startups. There was really only 3 folks in the dispensary at the time. It was myself, a budtender, and a manager. So they wanted to train me to get in the bud room. And I was like, oh, no, I cannot. I don't know anything. I know nothing about weed. I don't even know, what do we even sell it in? They're like, an eighth, a quarter. I'm like, of what? I was terrified to go in the bud room. I didn't know what I was talking about. But, I think just helping patients day after day, like you said, it's really just creating a customer experience, which I had done in hospitality. I had done in the restaurant. It's your job to make them feel comfortable. When it came to product knowledge, I just leaned on the science behind the plant. I wanted it was like setting a menu at a restaurant. Give me all the knowledge. Tell me I want to know everything about this strain, the flavor. Quiz me on it. Quiz me on the lineage. Like I'm gonna have this down pat. I worked at a steakhouse at the time too, and I was a vegetarian. So everyone laughed. They're like, "You work at a steakhouse,
Nice.
you're a vegetarian. You work at a weed shop, you don't smoke weed." And I was
That is
like, "But
hilarious.
it's all about education, making the customer feel comfortable." And then once you talk to so many folks and assist them in making their decision, and they come back and they say, I loved that strain and I loved it for XYZ, it made me feel this way. I would just catalog that in my brain over and over and over again. And then, man, I became the best Budtender. And that was
I
my
bet.
goal. And yeah, I mean, it was just my goal to, again, make everyone feel comfortable. So many folks coming in that day too weren't comfortable purchasing cannabis. So, sometimes they were a consumer, but they didn't feel comfortable walking in to buy it out of the store. Sometimes they had been prescribed through their doctor, but they were almost even anti-cannabis. They had never consumed. So it was just my job to make them feel comfortable and, give them really basic knowledge to help them make an informed decision.
Totally. Was there a moment where you kind of thought that it could be a career, not just a job? Starting off, it sounds like it was just a receptionist gig and you were getting into a little bit, but was there a time when things clicked and you were like, I'm going to be Kristi Ryder, the Colorado cannabis industry mogul?
Oh gosh. I mean, to say that I've been in it 15 years, I'm shocked myself. Again, I wanted to do it just to say I did, just to see it. The way I worked my way up was natural. Honestly, I feel like I had great mentors that kept pushing me to do more. We're just in such an evolving industry too. So it just really captured my attention that we were creating the framework. There was never a boring day. So I was robbed at gunpoint at one of our
Jeez.
dispensaries. Yeah, just like never. I've been through the ringer. And there's just never a boring day, whether it was regulatory, it was packaging. Like we didn't have packaging back in the day, creating systems, inventory management systems. I mean, at the very beginning, all of our baked goods, one of our owner's wives made all of our baked goods and she would deliver
Wow.
them. Like to just see the evolution and be a part of it. I kept being like, man, 3 years, I got to get out of here. Like, what are we still doing? But then 2 years later, 2 years later, 2 years later, I think the turning point that I knew I could really make a career was my transition out of retail into sales when we launched PAX in 2016. I wasn't particularly interested in doing sales.
You were still at the lab at this point, right? You weren't yet at PAX.
Correct. I was managing our retail stores. And then we got the contract to launch the first PAX pods in 2015. It was us in Colorado, and then there was a company out of California that was licensed to create them as well. And then, they just said, we think you'd be a great sales lead. And we'd love for you to kind of start our sales team. And I was like, I don't want to do sales. If you've never been in sales, when you think of sales, you think of like the pest control guy that like knocks on your door or the call you get that you hang up. That's what I think of as sales. And my boss at the time was like, you do sales every day. I'm like, oh, that's different. They're coming in ready to shop. I'm just guiding their decision, chit-chatting them up, asking how their kids are. That's different. But I think I took the leap. And, I think anyone in their career, that first, like, I guess, chance you take or leap you take and you're successful at it, I think that gives you that passion to just feel like, what else can I do? What else can I do that I think I can't? Right. So I'd say, to answer your question, I think that was really my turning point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess speaking to that theme of evolution and your experience really selling this new format into the Colorado industry. How did you go about selling people on this new customer experience? How did you get them to really believe in this new concept, and what ultimately convinced folks to try out selling PAX products in their dispensaries?
Yeah. Well, that was honestly the easiest sales period of my life. PAX made it very easy for us. I mean, two things that have obviously are a theme in any, go-to-market strategy. We were bringing innovation to the space, both from a formulation perspective. At that point, not only was CO2 almost like the only oil on the market, little bit of distillate. Open was like the biggest brand, and Open dominated. They were like one of the only vape brands on the market at that point. So our entire vape shelf in the stores was Open. Like Evo Lab was starting to come out, but everything was CO2. So, I have to pay respects to our formulationists at the lab, figured out how to put live resin into a cartridge or a PAX pod. And then, of course, PAX on the technology side, which PAX is rooted in technology. We're in the Mission District, based out of the Bay Area, started like 2 Harvard grads. We have engineers from Google, from Apple. The minds and the talent over there to this day is incredible. So what they gave us to bring to market was nothing like anyone had ever seen before. Now, the price point, obviously, I think at that point, the price point, it was the MSRP for $70 the device. But the kicker, and it's something I've learned now just in general, like if you guys remember, PAX had the app at the time. So your device connected to your phone, you'd open the app, you had temperature control, you could control the color of the device. I mean, they couldn't say no when you showed them the experience that the customer would have. They were just wowed. They kind of had a wallet. They're like, oh, but the price, but the innovation, but okay, let's do it. I mean, we closed so many doors so quickly. And again, PAX made my job very, very easy.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the live resin, and maybe, for folks listening, I think most people will have kind of a good idea about these devices and pods, but maybe a quick 30-second crash course on, what live resin is, why it was so revolutionary and exciting, and, how you thought about bringing that messaging and pairing it with the kind of innovation that PAX offered when bringing it to market.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast is probably familiar with live resin, but I will mansplain it. The thing that makes live resin unique is it starts basically the plant as it was meant to be. It's harvested and flash frozen from there. And then you use a hydrocarbon extraction, which basically extracts at a different pressure than a CO2 extraction. So the goal in a live resin extraction is essentially to maintain the cannabinoids and the terpenes exactly how they were in the plant. So then we take it from there. This is slightly controversial, but these specific formulations not on the market anymore. At that time, our formulationist, who was a scientist, chose to use an emulsifier. At the time, it was propylene glycol, not polyethylene glycol, which, as studies show, is unsafe to be inhaled. Propylene glycol has actually been studied quite a bit through like the tobacco vaping industry. So we were using that to emulsify. And if you've ever had a nicotine vape, or even if you've seen someone use a nicotine vape, that white cloud that kind of refreshing, there's no harshness to it, right? As the industry kind of continued to move forward and innovate formulations, we now use more, I'd say, natural from the plant emulsifiers. But I will say what was great about that emulsifier is you did not have to Frankenstein the plant. You could extract it, emulsify it, and cannabinoid and flavor profile was so true to the original strain. And then obviously you got it to a consistency that you were able to put it in a vaporizer pod or cartridge, and people just have the most amazing experience from the effects of it. We call it full spectrum now. which essentially just means you're getting the full effects of all the terpenes and cannabinoids, which we all know are like so important to the overall experience. And then again, the flavor was just so beautiful and consistent. Again, it was so revolutionary at that time. And to this day, I still think it's like the truest form of the plant. Nowadays, in extraction, to get that close to the formulation of the plant and only use natural from the plant emulsifiers, you kind of have to take the plant apart a little bit and then put it back together, so you can recreate. But I don't think it's exactly the same.
They don't make them like they used to.
They don't.
So I guess like shifting away from these, really big differentiators like, product innovation and great technology, it feels like in cannabis, there are so many products, there's so many SKUs, there's so many different strains, there's so much, differentiation of all the things you might run into on the shelf. But it feels like there aren't that many like true brands where when you hear the brand, it means something and it communicates something to you from the associations you've built either as a customer or even just sort of as an observer. Why do you think that is? Is there something that the industry just hasn't really figured out about how to make really great brands other than, some of the ones out there like PAX that I think really do have that very distinct, presence?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly why I think it is, at least in Colorado and some similar markets like California. But Colorado started with you had to be vertically integrated. At the very beginning in medical, you had to make 100% of your own products. Now, back then, there obviously wasn't as much product availability and innovation. It was really flower, edibles, vapes came out when some regulations changed. But I think, and this was maybe a mistake we made when I was at the clinic and the lab too, is we started getting into extraction. We had the plant materials, but then certain decisions would be made to bring products to market simply because we had excess oil, right? We had too much distillate. We had too much this. What else can we put it in? And I think just about everyone in the industry did that. Even brands that came out, oh my gosh, we have too much trend. We need to figure out where to put it. So I think you started seeing products and brands get created that started with that problem. Whereas, as we all know, brands and products should really start with the consumer and a demand for it. It's something that I'm so thankful coming over to PAX and learning more about. Everything we do at PAX starts with the consumer. We have like a consumer analytics division. I don't think a lot of dispensaries or brands have that. We are constantly surveying our consumers, studying them, understanding who they are. So we're not just ordering a cart from China, putting some oil in it and slapping it into a package, and having a graphic designer throw a brand on it. Like, it starts with that consumer research and then we build from there. And I wish more brands did that. I would say maybe 10% do. And then again, there's a lot of riffraff out there. And, I think rationalization will come. It's a fortunate and unfortunate part of kind of what we're seeing in the industry right now with some retail brands failing. But again, I think when you don't start your brand with your customer in mind, you're bound to fail.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, part of an artifact of, I think, the problem that you're describing of surplus inventory and products that are not resonating with anyone and no one wants is something that we see rampant across the industry today, which is the discounts and the deals and the race to the bottom and the price compression. And I think that's something that most businesses that we work with in the cannabis industry in every market are really struggling with and really trying to figure out. I guess from your perspective, how do you work against that and maintain that kind of premium positioning and kind of imbue that high touch sales motion that I know that you're known for and PAX is known for into the kind of relationships with retailers and then the consumers?
Yeah. I bring a marketing budget to the table. And to your point, it really is such a problem. And not all retailers, but a lot of them, we've created a lot of problems for ourselves. And and again, I think obviously we're 15 years in. We're still like a baby when it comes to an industry. But I think the purchasing manager at companies is such an valued position. And like I read that the purchasing position at Nordstrom, for instance, is like a 10-year career path. And you have to start by being like a data analyst. And I think luckily I now have some really great purchasing managers in cannabis, some that have come from other industries or some that have just like seen it all. But essentially, so many of the purchasers would take 50 cents off my price per unit over like a $50,000 marketing budget. And so I think marketing in this space is also really undervalued. But I like to be the differentiator in this space. When someone strong arms me for 50 cents or says like, this brand is giving me this price. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to give you a $15,000 marketing budget to launch this product on your shelf. The other thing PAX does, so we have a brand marketing division and a trade marketing division, which I think is very cool and very unique because we have an entire team of people dedicated to brand building.
And that's consumer facing versus B2B, right?
Correct. Yeah. Consumer facing versus how we're showing up on shelves, how we're merchandising our products and whatnot. So I love our brand team too. They just get to do cool shit. I mean, they got to do like, we did a collab. We did a custom shoe collab with Nike. We've done a lot of amazing things. But yeah, I mean, we have an entire division dedicated to people knowing about PAX before they even enter a dispensary. And I think so many brands, don't bring a marketing budget to the table in conversations with their retail partners. And too often, they're leaning on the retail partner to move their product. So they're almost scapegoating their own connection with the customer. I really would encourage retailers, purchasing managers, retail directors, whatever it might be, to when you're like vetting a brand for your shelf, make that a question in the process. What's your marketing budget? Who's your customer? Do you know your customer? How are you going to get your customer into my stores? Because it really does need to be a marriage between the brand and the retailer. I mean, if you look at Target, like Target's a brand in itself, right? They advertise, but they advertise that they have all the brands you want on their shelves. And then when you think about how much advertising like Tide, Coca-Cola, are doing outside of Target, that's when you really generate and get the customer, coming in excited to shop, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so how does that loop then close? Once you've gotten the customers into the door, how are you hearing back from them whether the product is resonating? What's your motion for understanding how the market is receiving your product once you've gotten it into the doors and then you've kind of gotten people in to experience it?
Ooh, that's a really great question. Probably somewhere where both PAX and the industry are lacking in general, because we don't have a lot of those data points. But we do have a customer service division that is actually dedicated to going out and talking to our current customers about their experience with PAX, and not just like their experience with their product, their perception of our brand. We did a really cool study. They were showing them images of PAX, like advertising, and just saying, like, does this resonate with you? How do you feel when you see this image? So we don't just digest, our product quality, our transparency, our trust in our product, but also the perception of our brand. We can pull out of those analytics. Folks customers will leave reviews on online menus. Our field teams, we have forums dedicated to them dropping feedback in. Who knows the customer the best? It's the budtender. That's who's at the front lines. So that connection with the budtender, we don't have like great feedback forms for the budtender, but as you guys know, like there are companies like Sparkplug that are really revolutionizing that connection with the budtender and truly meeting them where they're at. We just did, to launch a new strain, we just did a budtender survey through Sparkplug, through Snaps. So our like product is like, Kristi, do you want this or this for the next strain launch? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to make this decision by myself. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like put it on Snaps, put it on Snaps. And we had a thought of what we were going to launch, and then the budtender like completely, but it was like by a long shot, this other strain won.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much more confident now. We're really data driven at PAX. And so I'm pushing either for PAX to get access or more purchasing managers, again, or retail directors to share this information with us. But like what our product retention is in their stores. Recently, we got some analytics of what percentage of PAX makes up for a new customer in that store. And then there's definitely ways to look at our retention. But again, like I said, I think that's a place in the industry that needs some evolving.
Totally.
In the big CPG verticals, there are those huge intermediaries, your Nielsen's, your Spins, your IRI. There are many, many decades old companies that have been doing it for years trying to provide this data. And it's always surprised me that cannabis branders, marketers, salespeople can really do what they do without the resources that everyone in CPG takes for granted.
Absolutely. We actually have a strategy consultant from McKinsey. He's analyzing all of our markets for us. And oh my gosh, we did one in Massachusetts. It was a 70 slide deck about not just like the market, but like what the market's telling us, specifically like what the consumer is telling us that they want. And of course, he's calling out where PAX maybe isn't delivering on that. So, but it's very, very cool. Again, we have so many folks that have been in so many different industries, specifically tech, but tech, CPG, Alc Bev. That was one of my favorite things officially coming over to PAX is just the wealth of knowledge over here that is really attempting to innovate in the space and bring some of those best practices from other industries to PAX. It's challenging though, because my gosh, like the industry, we're kind of stuck in our ways in a sense. It's really hard to change the mindset of some people. So that's my job. It's fun.
Yeah, in that kind of vein, something that I think PAX does that is totally unique and unlike anything that we see in the space are some of your activations, some of your in-market engraving days. I'd love to hear about how you guys think about that in terms of marketing investment, ROI, community building. I think that's just such a great example of PAX's kind of unique positioning and ability to cultivate community and get people off the couch and go to a store and support the retailers, of course, but have an offering that's really clearly so enticing.
Absolutely. I don't know who it was, but whoever came up with the engraver like needs to be on a PAX wall somewhere, glorified, because that was one of the most brilliant activations I've seen in this space. And it's like stood the test of time. Several times we've thought, okay, that's like old. Like we need a new shtick. But honestly, I don't think you can take it away. People are addicted to that engraver, even if they have 10 custom engraved devices. Like they want a new one. They'll come find us at a store. I had my brand ambassador like leave an activation early. And someone was really mad. They're like, I was coming in with my 10 devices.
No.
But yeah, so, okay, when PAX first launched, the idea was that like, building that emotional connection to the product And it was like keys, wallet, phone, PAX pen. That was a lot of our like imagery was like, grab your keys, your wallet, your phone, and your PAX pen. Like it needs to be with you at all times. Obviously the price point, anytime you're spending a little bit more, the price point alone, what you paid for the product is going to create an emotional connection to it that you don't want to lose it. It's not a leave behind, right? And then when we brought those engravers, it was just that extra layer of personalization, customization that has really just, it's truly just a part of our brand at this point. People never get sick of it. I love being in dispensary. We sponsor Aspen Gay Ski Week every year. And we're one of the retail partner up there, Roots RX. They're the only cannabis sponsor, and they have all their brands up. So everything else is liquor, it's CPG, it's skincare, it's ski brands. So it's one of the only events where we're not in a sea of cannabis. We have a line out the door to use that engraver. And it's fun because they get to design it themselves. So again, you're just creating that emotional connection to your product.
Yeah, such a moment. How do you kind of try to capture that moment and scale it outside of the store? Is there a playbook that you have for your reps when talking about, those kind of PAX moments?
So this is actually cool. We now offer custom engraving on our e-com. So you can actually go onto pax.com and create your own device and then order it, and it'll drop ship to you. It's called My Pax. Now you don't get to see the engraving, which is definitely a 50% of the experience, but you can still personalize your device through our e-com.
So with things like engravings coming in and kind of creating a more exciting dispensary environment for the customer and brands really investing in that, that's a pretty big change from back in the day what you were describing of 3 people in a dispensary with homemade edibles.
Yeah.
What do you think is the next iteration of dispensary advancement? What does it feel like in 5 years or 10 years? Where do you want to see dispensaries go in terms of the experience that they're providing and how it can enable brands to more effectively partner with them?
I have so many thoughts in this category. Okay, so first things first, I love to see dispensaries create more, differentiate themselves and create more of a lifestyle experience. I think something that needs improvement, and I commend the retail partners that are doing it, is we need to see more brand power in the dispensary space. And here's why. And again, I've learned so much being on the brand side, and seeing the amount of work that goes into all the things we're talking about, and then kind of maybe seeing it fail in the dispensary channel, or also just I feel like I was in a bubble when I worked in the dispensary, and now I have to shop as a regular customer. And so I'm experiencing, the dispensary as a customer, and often I have really just uncomfortable experiences. And one thing I want to highlight is I think a lot of it is because we're used to a certain type of retail experience that we need to mimic more for consumers. Because when you think about the dispensary experience, it's so different than really any restaurant, even fast casual restaurants, retail. You're walking in and there's a person in front of you saying, "What do you want?"
Well, even before that, you have to give your ID. It's almost like you're immediately not welcome.
You're immediately not welcome. Even as welcoming as that, that receptionist might be, you walk in and you're being asked to make a choice about something that you don't really have. You can't touch, you can't feel, you can't read. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of signage to make a decision. Often, they put pricing on a TV screen, but you don't know how to compare what that says, and it's $50. What is that in the case?
It's a size 6 font.
Size 6 font. Yes. And the whole time the budtender's standing there just like waiting for you to tell him or her what you want. And even me being in cannabis, I know every formulation. I know, price points, brands. I know it all. I feel very intimidated by that interaction. I can only imagine how, like, the Karen housewife that like works up the nerve to walk in a dispensary must feel, right? So that's something there's a lot of things I think need to change. I think one thing is I wish retail partners would lean into brands to create more of like a merchandising brand experience. So often I think this is so strange. So California, we get a lot of slotting fees. We pay a lot to show up as a brand. We cut big checks to show up. And I was like, that's kind of bullshit. Like, don't we both have, stake in us showing up as a brand in your stores? But ultimately in Colorado, so often the opposite happens where it's like, awesome, we launched packs. Can I get like your empty packaging?
Yeah.
And I'm like, can I do more than that? They're like, no, like some dispensaries just like it to be a really fair playing field. But I think that's so confusing to the customer because if I walk into the grocery store, let's say I'm in the chip aisle, like your brain, the brand power, or it could be the opposite. It could be the brand that looks organic and only has 4 SKUs that you're attracted to because it's not the biggest brand on the shelf. Like those are things that help us as consumers make a decision. And we don't really have that in the dispensaries. Some are doing it well, where they're giving brands space to tell their brand story. I hope to see in the future the role of the budtender change. I recognize we now have like a pretty wide spectrum of customer, someone that knows exactly what they want and someone that still needs quite a bit of education. But again, even if I was a new customer, what would help me is just to be able to like walk around the store for a minute and like let my brain digest what I'm seeing, read the packages, turn them over, read the merchandising units, right? And then I hope it goes to more of a scenario where they can grab the budtender should they have questions, or like someone comes around and says, can I help you find anything? Rather than that like intimidating, make a decision. Also, like nothing, you can't see prices a lot in dispensaries. And I don't know about you guys, like I love wine. I drink a lot of wine, but I don't feel like I know a lot about wine. I buy a bottle, I try it, and if I like it, I put it on my list of, things I want to buy again. But, just like the label and the price are how I make my decision to this day in the wine aisle. It's not that I want to buy the cheapest bottle. I don't want to buy the most expensive. I want to be somewhere in between, depending on the occasion. Maybe I'll spend $3 more. And a lot of dispensaries, like they don't have the price visible to the customer, which again, I think is just another factor that assists the consumer, even when they don't know what they're shopping for, what level they're looking for.
Yeah.
That doesn't really help me. Oh, you're so right. Okay, that's a whole other topic of something I wish we'd get rid of. And I heard a story from a customer the other day. I was at a golf event and I was talking to a gentleman who does waste management in the cannabis industry. And he was talking, he was a little older, probably in his late 60s, early 70s. He was talking about how much he loved cannabis, but he was like, I can't smoke it anymore though. It's just too strong. Like the products on the market are just way too strong. And he was like telling me stories of, he's like, I smoked a lot of weed in college. Like I went to the dead. I went to the, like, we were smoking joints. We'd do this. We'd put hash in our joint. Like he was like letting you know he's credible. I'm like, I believe you. But then he's like, I keep trying to smoke weed these days. And it's like, it's way too strong for me. So that's something I hope we see change in the future. But what's funny is then often I stand in a dispensary, in a lobby, and I hear that comment, well, how much I want the highest THC. But I wonder if
Or training them to ask that. Yeah.
we trained it. We trained
Yeah.
them. It's not that they care. It's that we trained them to ask that, and we can untrain them. We just need to get on board.
Well, I think, no, you go ahead. You keep interrupting. And maybe drawing on some of your hospitality background as well.
That's a hard question, you guys. What do I not want to change? I mean, I guess I most fear a world where, I'm terrified of like synthetic cannabis. Um, I hope the story continues to be about the plant. I think that's something we can take from other industries, specifically like the wine industry. If you've ever been, speaking of hospitality, like the way we describe a good steak or a good bottle of wine, I hope that kind of stays in cannabis because the plant, taking it back to my early budtending days, and those were the things I learned: the terpene profile, the cannabinoid profile, the region, the lineage, because you're just giving yourself talking points that even if they don't resonate, maybe they're like, oh, Durban poison's a land-raised strain from Africa. Maybe like the customer doesn't care. But one time I was at a restaurant and the guy said that, the wine was from volcanic rock in Italy. So it gives it this, this flavor. And I was like, well, I want that. So I hope that stays. I hope we kind of go back to that, to like at the beginning days, because we didn't have all these other products. It was all about the flower. So often I see budtender. Sometimes we're overeducating the budtenders. Like I hear them talking about. Hear them using extraction methods as pitch points. And I listened to them. I listened to this girl. She's probably my age, and clearly was like, "Oh, I'm just here for a vape." She didn't really know what she wanted. She didn't know she wanted a vape. And they like walked her through all the extraction methods, used big words like butane and CO2 and chemical free. And I was like, you could tell she's like, I think I want the one that is chemical free, which was rosin. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, this woman is not a rosin customer. This woman probably wants a blueberry distillate. But she got scared because the talking point about rosin was chemical free. And I was just like, oh man. So I don't know. I hope the industry stays rooted in the flowers. I don't want products to become, we moved so quickly with product development, which is a good thing. But again, I don't want things to get Frankensteined too much. It's all about the plant. We all love the plant.
100%. And any parting words to someone just getting started in their cannabis career today? Anything that you'd want them to keep in mind as they think about building and growing and flourishing in this industry?
Oh my gosh. Well, listen, we're up against it in this industry right now. I know a lot of people that are tired and are saying, oh, I would, if it didn't work here, I would leave or have thought about leaving. But I mean, I love to see how many opportunities there are in this industry, how many opportunities have been created in this industry, from technology to brand to services to waste management to sales, product development, consumer analytics. And, I always say, like, how many times in your life how many industries are going to get created in your lifetime? So how lucky are we to not just be in the industry, but like actually building the framework for the future of the industry. And yeah, like seeing how this plant becomes a CPG product, and how we, speak to more people about how amazing and how many therapeutic properties the plant has. So yeah, get in it, try different things. Start as a budtender. That's the most fun you can have is being a budtender. That's a place you can learn the most. I've said it's like in life where it's like if you weren't a server, then you're like, ooh, you didn't get like a core skill set that you need. And I think, start as a budtender or a trimmer, like start at the bottom, or at least do it to get your experience. And then my gosh, like the spider webs that happen from there. I've had some folks say this too. The industry's not going anywhere. A lot of brands are hurting, a lot of retailers are hurting, but the consumer is there. And it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry. And we're at the tip of the iceberg. So I can't wait to see what's next. I have the energy to stay in it for many years.
Well, we're lucky to have you. Kristi Ryder is head of sales at PAX with over a decade in cannabis, from managing medical dispensaries in Colorado to pioneering live resin formats and building national sales teams. She's someone who's shaped how cannabis products are sold, scaled, and experienced. Kristi, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Well, that's it for this episode. If you liked this one, leave us a review, send it to a friend, text your sales rep and tell them to give it a listen and beef up their marketing budget for your store.